Y'all, you're gonna need a box of tissues and some anger management classes after we talk about today's Netflix documentary, Take Care of Maya, because when I watched it, it had me in absolute tears and an absolute rage at what was done to her and her family. And we're gonna talk about all of it in today's video. Hello, Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. The sofa's back there. Our little mascot Roscoe's back there. And you'll also probably notice a little something over him. Roscoe wanted a portrait to make him forever, and well, what Roscoe wants, Roscoe gets. And my name is Paul. Welcome to the channel, or well, welcome back to the sofa if you've been hanging out with us for a while. Now, y'all, today we are going to be reviewing the Netflix documentary, Take Care of Maya. Now, here's the thing. This is currently in trial right now. And so what I wanted to do is this. I've talked to some of y'all about this like in comment sections and other parts of Instagram, stuff like that or whatever. So I wanted to like go over the trial and all that, but I wanted to start at the beginning with kind of an overview to get myself first and foremost on like a what exactly is this case and what's going on before I delve into the trial. So that being said, it's just heartbreaking to me, and it's so utterly important that she was finally able to get to trial and that this is going on right now, because in my opinion at least, this family was wronged on such a major level. It's just absolutely gut-wrenching. So the way we're going to do this is we're going to be reviewing the Netflix documentary. Again, it's called Take Care of Maya, and we're also going to be reviewing an article. When we get to that point, I'll put it up there, let you see the, cover of it and all that. So there's that. We'll do all that and just kind of talk about it, do opinions. We'll do the majority of opinions at the end of it. But you know me, if you've been watching, well, good Lord, I have to spread them throughout. Now, look, before we even jump in, if you do want to follow me on the old Insta, on the old gram, if you will, go on, click the link. It's in the description, whatever you kids call it, and it's on the screen here, whatever. Roscoe makes appearances over there. He keeps it worth watching for, okay? So that being said, what I want to start the video off with is let's just go over some basics. Like, this is this person, and this is what this term means that we're going to hear a lot of throughout this. Okay, so just starting with the family here. The mother, Beata Kowalski, now she came over from Poland when she was 16 years old. She put herself through college. She ended up being a nurse, a very strong woman. Keep in mind as we watch this about her being the nurse and having just that kind of knowledge and that background there. Now, the father's name, so Beata's husband, Maya's dad, is Jack, and then she also has a brother. And then Maya, of course. Maya is I'm going to say one of the victims in this, right? She's the central one, victimized by the hospital, but in my opinion, the entire family are victims, right? But obviously, Maya, was essentially medically kidnapped by the hospital. Okay, so there's those players, key players. Now, let's just talk about a couple of names that are going to be prevalent that I want you to really think of and know of as we go. So we have Dr. Anthony Kirkpatrick. Now, he's the one who diagnosed Maya with CRPS. Don't worry, we'll figure out CRPS in a minute. And he turns them onto the ketamine treatments. Don't worry, we'll figure out the ketamine. Good Lord, hold on now. Okay, so that's him. Now, this is where y'all go on, Roscoe, get us signed up for anger management. It literally gets me going just saying the name. Dr. Sally Smith. Woo, Mama Jama. Okay, let's put a little thing up here on the screen and just read this article that kind of describes who she was very quickly. So as you see, it says, who is Dr. Sally Smith? Dr. Sally Smith is the former medical director for the Pinellas County Child Protective Services team in Florida, who came under fire after investigations revealed that her quick methods of diagnosing child abuse led to dozens of instances where charges were dropped, parents were acquitted, or caregivers were found to be credibly innocent. Okay, so just keep that in your mind as we go. Now, let's look up a couple of definitions just to know before we get into it all, because you'll hear them over and over. Okay, so first, let's look up what is CRPS. Disease. Complex regional pain syndrome. So it says chronic arm or leg pain developing after injury, surgery, stroke, or heart attack. The exact cause of the complex regional pain syndrome isn't well understood, but may involve abnormal inflammation or nerve dysfunction. Now, this little thing right beneath it, it says rare treatment can help, but this condition can't be cured, requires a medical diagnosis, chronic, can last for years, or be lifelong. Okay, so there's that. So that's at the center of this. This is what she would be diagnosed with, okay? So now, well, let's look up ketamine. Okay, so what is ketamine? So ketamine, medication. Ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic used medically for induction and maintenance of anesthesia. It is also used as a treatment for depression, a pain management tool, and as a, recreational drug. So there's those two things. So you know that going into it because you'll hear them over and over. Okay, now that we've got the palette done, now that we've build the foundation, let's get into it. Okay, so it's 2015 and Maya begins this whole process. Her symptoms, and the symptoms come up. It's like pain, tiredness, and it started with a breathing problem with a respiratory infection. Her skin was hot. Her feet began to turn inward.
I remember I was in a great deal of pain. My arms, my legs, my feet. I would always feel very lethargic, and I wasn't able to move as efficiently anymore.
Now, here's the thing. There was literally no answers for them, okay? They went from doctor to doctor, hospital to hospital, nothing, right? Now, remember, the mother, Beata, she was a nurse, so she's documenting every last bit of this. Now, keep that in mind because her due diligence with that is part of the reason why they're going to hopefully be able to get justice. Now, I want to go ahead and introduce the article that we're also going to be referencing. So let's go ahead and check that out on the screen, and I'll read through it. You can pause to read or go through it with me. Okay, so you see here on the screen, this is by The Cut, and it's by Diane Nere, and it says, what happened to Maya when a 10-year-old girl complained of mysterious pain? A doctor suspected child abuse. How far would she go to prove it? And there's a wonderful picture of Maya there. Now let's move on to the first little clip that we're going to be reading. So it says, Beata Kowalski could pinpoint when it all started. The 4th of July weekend, 2015. Maya and her younger brother Kyle were playing with sparklers near their home in Venice, Florida, when she had a severe asthma attack. Beata took Maya to Sarasota Memorial Hospital, where she began to complain of a burning sensation in her legs and feet. And within weeks, she could barely walk. Her feet turned inward. She developed lesions, and her legs could no longer support her body. At night, Beata could hear Maya's cries from her bedroom on the other side of the house. She worked as a home care nurse and had seen many kinds of suffering, but Maya's symptoms were like nothing she had ever encountered. Now, eventually, this is when they would find Dr. Anthony Kirkpatrick, who would give her the diagnosis of CRPS.
It was clear and simple: CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome.
Now, the symptoms and whatnot that she seems to be exhibiting are literally like all in line with this, right? The doctor is like, oh, bam, clear case of this. Here's what we're doing. But this is the thing. At this time, and as you even heard in the little definition that we did, it's very rare. It was relatively new back then. So this was not something that a lot of people were like, oh, yeah, we know what this is. And, a very commonly known thing in the medical world.
This syndrome was first described over 100 years ago, but it was only recognized in modern medicine in the 1990s.
Now, this is where things will take a turn. So it's like, okay, we have, this diagnosis, but then treatment for this is like, it's not really that easy to treat. And this is where things will lead them to the alternative therapies, and the alternative therapy being named ketamine.
We've treated over 3,000 patients with complex regional pain syndrome. And we know what the best therapy is for it. It's called ketamine.
Okay, so now let's very quickly go look at the DEA page as to their definition, what they're saying about ketamine. So here you see on the thing, it says ketamine. You see the little pictured vials of it. It says ketamine is a dissociative anesthetic that has some hallucinogenic effects. It distorts the perception of sight and sound and makes the user feel disconnected and out of control. It is referred to as a dissociative anesthetic hallucinogen because it makes patients feel detached from their pain and environment. It says it can induce a state of sedation, feeling calm and relaxed, immobility, relief from pain, and amnesia, no memory of events while under the influence of the drug, and is abused for the dissociative sensations and hallucinogenic effects. Ketamine has also been used to facilitate SA. Ketamine is an approved medical product as an injectable, short-acting anesthetic for use in humans and animals, and as esketamine, something, the active form of the drug, as a nasal spray for treatment-resistant depression. Now, here's the thing. Ketamine, this nowadays, whatever at least, is way more widely used. However, what we'll also learn is that in order to get the type of results that they needed for Maya, this level of pain, they would have to do major amounts of it.
Ketamine is a safe, effective treatment for advanced complex regional pain syndrome. Because when the ketamine gets into your body, it actually stimulates the brain and kind of resets everything.
Now, this would prove to work for Maya, but like I just said, it was one of these things where she was only able to get low dosages and things of that nature here. And so they needed to do these mega treatments. There was another form of this treatment, but it would take them all the way to Mexico. Now they would have to pay out of pockets for these. And it was doing this a large amount where essentially they're putting a patient in a coma and they're doing like this large amount of it to do these treatments. And so this is the avenue that they would have to pursue.
And it works.
Dr. Kirkpatrick says the experimental treatment is only available in Mexico.
So the risks are really high, but there's not really any other option for the family. They're watching their daughter deteriorate every day. She gets worse and worse and worse. So they end up deciding they go to this trip. They go to Mexico. Monterrey, Mexico is where it's at for the procedure. Now, this is November of 2015. Now, Maya would say years later in depositions that yes, the dosages she took, she did remember some of these side effects that they talk about of hallucinations and whatnot. But that absolutely 100% that these treatments worked, they helped. I mean, it was life-changing at this time.
Okay, Maya, it's now January 6th that you had your ketamine coma. Now, having been through all that, was it worth it?
Yes.
Doesn't she just seem so much happier? I mean, like the smile on her face, she just looks so refreshed, right? So now, once the family gets back, and this is kind of like an obvious, how healthcare and the cost of it are here in the States, they're paying 10 grand a pop for these treatments. And like, we can't afford this, right? So Dr. Kirkpatrick's like, hey, look, I got you. I have a colleague over here, Dr. Hanna, who, he'll take your insurance. We can do low dosages, almost like a maintenance type thing. So they end up getting introduced to this doctor and continuing forth. Okay, so let's reference back to the article real quick and go over a few things in that. So it says, over the next year, the Kowalskis took Maya for ketamine infusions every 3 to 4 weeks. Kirkpatrick charged him $10,000 per 4-day session, which was not covered by health insurance. Beata worked extra shifts, and the Kowalskis sold a rental property to cover the cost, and eventually they shifted Maya's treatment to a second specialist, Dr. Hanna of the Florida Spine Institute, whose rates were lower. Maya still required a wheelchair, but the ketamine led to huge progress, Jack says. Maya's feet straightened, the lesions healed, and there were periods when her distress seemed manageable. So things went really well for a while. Like they said, her feet straightened. There's this noticeable improvement of what she was doing. Quality of life seemed to really change for her with these ketamine treatments. But then as we make our way to October 2016, things start to go down south very quickly for her. So Maya is in like extreme pain. Now Jack, the husband, the father, is at home with her, and the mother, Beata, is out. I can't remember where she's at, but she's either at work or something. But he calls her and it's like, oh my, like, what do we do? What do we do? And they make this decision, as any parent would, like, we need to take her to the hospital. And so they are going to be in for a rude awakening when they take her to the hospital.
The first nurse in triage had no idea what CRPS was.
Now, you can only imagine to their dismay, like, oh my gosh, they don't even know what this is, right? They've already been through the ringer with this, going from place to place to place to place and doing these treatments. But again, as you heard, this is like a lifelong thing. It can come up like that. And so their kid, is in major distress. Of course, they're going to go to the hospital. So, Jack's like, let me get my wife on the phone so she can explain this. And that's what they do. They put her on the phone to try and explain what's going on.
Her concern was merely administering ketamine over and over, more and more and more.
So the staff, who don't even know what the diagnosis is, right? Not at least some of them, and understandably, they're a little bit like, you're wanting to give her what? Like ketamine. Like, remember, this was not like this widely accepted thing back then. And especially at the doses that they were saying that she was taking. So, this is a good place to kind of pause and talk about this dynamic, because there's two sides to this right here. There's the see something, say something scenario, right? So absolutely more power to that. Now, where this will take a left-hand turn is once that's done, once that's reported, and evidence starts to show, oh, wait a minute, this is what was really going on. The hospital staff and the hospital seem to just dig their heels in and make it an intention and to leave things out to prove a point that wasn't really there. So we'll talk about that more later, but I just want to kind of put that out there because, as I was watching this, I was like, look, I want people to report if there needs to be a report. If you follow true crime, then so many times people, authorities, people in places, they don't say anything, and then the unthinkable happens to a child, right? So I don't want to sit here and come off like I'm being like, oh, they shouldn't have done anything. Look, I get it. And even Jack will say at the end of the day, like, look, we get it. They want to prevent abuse going going on. 100% we're behind that. They need to go about it a different way, though, in these instances where all this evidence has come up that this ain't working.
She was belligerent, demanding.
The mom was very controlling, and she told me, this is what you are going to do.
So here's the thing. So the staff and the mother are like butting heads, right? There's a vibe there that's not good. They don't want to be told what to do. Yeah, I can almost see this playing out in my head. Now they're also sitting here like, yeah, if we gave your daughter this dosage of ketamine, she could die. And you'll hear them say where it's like, they don't, she doesn't seem to be fazed by this and that and the other. Remember, they've gone through this. This is not like it's normal to them, but they've been through this so much. It's almost like, look, we know we've done this, right? This is what has worked. This is what we need to have happen. And that wasn't happening. So understandably, both sides are very frustrated with this. Now, the doctors will sit there and be like, okay, we'll give her low doses of K, and it does nothing. And that begins to make the staff question, well, was this original diagnosis even true?
As the days progressed, we do not feel that we were making any effect to Maya's status. In fact, we began questioning the diagnosis of complex generalized pain syndrome.
Now, as you can imagine, as this is going on, they're going to understandably get to the point of saying, why are we here? We just need to leave. We just need to take our daughter and go home. However, the hospital ain't having that.
We were told if we plan on trying to leave, that security would be called.
And if you have a suspicion of child abuse, well, then you're required to contact Child Protection Services.
Okay, now let's quickly reference back to the article we've been reading through. We're going to jump down to about halfway through this paragraph and just read through that. It says hospital staff wanted Smith to complete her evaluation first. It's talking about Susan. And they told the Kowalskis that leaving the hospital would be AMA against medical advice. If the parents attempted to take Maya home, they said they would be arrested. Okay, now you can only imagine. So it's like, I mean, what do we do, right? Now, we're going to also learn that, that's not necessarily true. Okay. And so that's another thing that's going to, it has come out in court depending on if you're watching it. But at this time, again, we're kind of in our minds transported back to this time where this is what they thought, right? So they're just like, okay, we're stuck here. We're not going anywhere. Our daughter's not getting the treatment. Like, I can feel their frustration. Now, on the same note, on the other hand, at this stage in time, when this is brand new to this hospital, they don't know anything. All they know is this family has come in. They're saying that A, B, and C, here's this this is what we do. And to them, this is alarming. They don't know enough. So I can understand having a concern of, we want to make sure that this child is not, being abused, like medically abused by the parents or whatever. Again, I'm not doubting the hospital for initially wanting to investigate because so often, as we've seen, they don't, right? But I can also just see the tension. I can only imagine what the parents must have felt like knowing this is what works, it's worked before, and these people are refusing it. Okay, so now we need to buckle the seatbelts up. Roscoe, get them buckled back there. Because y'all, this is where we're going to meet Dr. Sally Smith, the woman who would turn this family's life upside down.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this case is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do. State your name for the record.
Sally Marie Smith.
Okay, let's go back to that article before we continue to get a little bit more of like behind the scenes and whatnot of what was going on. So on the screen here, you'll see it says the nurse concerned by the demand for such a powerful drug asked a social worker named Deborah Hansen to meet with the Kowalskis. They were distressed, Hansen later recalled. There was a lot going on and Maya was, she widened her eyes at the memory, captivating. Maya was also thrashing about. Hansen agreed that it was strange for Beata to demand pain medication before allowing a routine test. A parent being uncooperative or failing to heed a medical professional's suggestions is considered a red flag for neglect, and Hansen filed a formal notice with the state. By the next morning, Florida's Department of Children and Families had discarded her report for lack of evidence, but some at the hospital remained concerned about Maya's case, and a pediatric ICU physician named Beatriz Tepa Sanchez placed a Saturday afternoon phone call to Smith, seeking her expert opinion. Smith is a doctor with more than 30 years of experience in child abuse pediatrics. Virtually everyone at All Children's, maybe even most medical providers in Pinellas County, regarded her as the doyenne of the field. I'm probably saying that wrong. She had spent so much time at the hospital that physicians knew to call her at the first indication of abuse or neglect, and they nearly always deferred to her judgment. Now, right away, side note, red flags immediately. We see this time and time again in these situations and cases and whatnot where someone holds a lot of power and they've done something for a while and they don't need to be doing that, because it's almost like they bring their own bias, their own stuff into things, and such is the case with this. Now, also keep in mind, so, Sally Smith is entering the scene here. She doesn't work for the hospital, but she isn't very forthcoming about that with people. She kind of allows them to think this.
She came in and she acted like a regular doctor that worked for the hospital.
Now, again, let's continue to get some more in-depth information from this article we've been referring to. So it says that all children, Smith wore a badge bearing the hospital's logo, and during the pandemic, sometimes sported a white lab coat. Families often assumed that she was a doctor on staff and that what they told her was protected by doctor-patient confidentiality. In reality, she didn't work for all children, and her primary employer was not the state. Florida privatized its child welfare system in 2004, and the work in Pinellas County is outsourced to a company called Suncoast Center Incorporated. Smith was one of its 117 employees. Suncoast and similar entities across the state are funded by more than $3 billion of public money, yet there is little oversight of how effective they are in stopping child abuse, or of how often they allege wrongdoing where none exist. In Pinellas County, children are almost 2.5 times more likely to be removed from their families than the state average. Again, red flag central for this entire thing. Now, during this, she's going to question Maya about some things. She's going to question the father. Why would you let your daughter do this? They'll go over all of this type stuff. And later in depositions, Maya would say, look, if we knew who she really was, we would not have had this discussion with her at all, right? And so then at this point, the staff is trying to think, okay, we have a Munchausen's by proxy situation going on here. So let's just look it up real quick here, y'all. Let's go to WebMD. It says, is a psychological disorder marked by attention-seeking behavior by a caregiver through those who are in their care. So here you can see this could have had some flags of that and whatnot in the beginning. Now here's the thing. She would literally, Sally Smith would talk to them for less than 10 minutes, right? And then this would determine this family's fate.
She did a 10-minute interview at most, and shortly after, she walks out.
Now from this, she will say, yep, ample evidence of child abuse, and the mother is the primary one doing this. Now, soon after they come in, the father's in the middle of doing something. They're like, you got to go. Your daughter is in state custody now. And you can imagine they're like, what? This is devastating for the family. Obviously, they contact a lawyer. Now, the lawyer, when interviewed for the documentary, is like, yes, you know what? The mother's very knowledgeable about Maya's condition, but she could not understand, why this was happening to them. She could not wrap her mind around this, right? Now, the lawyer will explain, look, CPS, the power that they have, kind of break it down for the family to be like, this is what you're caught up in now. Now, this time she'll explain to the family, this is who Sally Smith is, right? This ain't your friend.
Children in Pinellas County are almost 2.5 times more likely to be removed from their families than the state average.
Now, we'll learn that Sally Smith prides herself on this. Now, one thing that was interesting in the documentary is they talked to her basically her opinion or whatever, on Beata, what's the vibe type thing. And she was like, look, at times she can be super direct, right? And she was like, and I think that some doctors probably found this offensive. And basically she was like, I think somebody there at that hospital was offended by her, that behavior, and her just being too direct. We're going to do this and kind of a thing. And to me, watching this, that was the vibe I got too. Almost like this started off, the nucleus of it was, number one, you're coming in, this is out of the norm, right? Okay, here's this child with this, the parents saying this, the parents very direct, very demanding and all this, and it rubbed somebody the wrong way. And I'm not trying to say it was a revenge thing, but they got it in their mind of, no, we don't believe this. This is what this is. And they wouldn't look any other direction.
So what was your personal assessment of Beata?
I think she could be a little too direct sometimes, and maybe some of the doctors took that offensively.
Now, Dr. Kirkpatrick, remember, he's the one who gave this original diagnosis, right? Well, he hears about what's going on. And in his world, he's like, oh, whoa, wait, let me call her. Let me tell them what's going on. And so he says that he calls Dr. Sally Smith to be like, no, look, this is what's really going on here. This is not a case of, child abuse or whatever.
This is what the diagnosis is. If you want to see the objective evidence, I got it for you. I told her that on the phone.
Now, let's refer back to the article to go a little bit deeper into that. That evening, Kirkpatrick sent a memo to a colleague. I cautioned Dr. Smith about accusing a family member of criminal conduct as she moves forward with her investigation, he wrote, noting that doing so could result in needless and permanent harm to the child and family. Separately, Hannah advised Smith that Munchausen by proxy was a common misdiagnosis in CRPS cases. According to the Cleveland Clinic, there are no reliable statistics on the disorder, but one estimate is that 0.04% of child abuse cases reported annually are related to it. The doctor's warnings were not included in Smith's report to the state, which urged that Maya be protected from her parents. Now, here's the thing. So, of course, like I just said, in the reports that Sally writes, she conveniently leaves this stuff out. And this is what I'm talking about earlier when I said, you see very quickly in this, evidence starts pointing away from, like, abuse, where it's like you've got documented stuff of doctors doing this and, that are standing by this. If you've watched some of these other cases of Munchausen's and whatnot, and eventually, like, when some of these doctors start talking and comparing stories, and it's like, no, that's not going on here. But not only does Sally ignore that, she intentionally left it out of the reports to form her own narrative. And even in depositions, she is completely removed.
Is that how you would classify what happened to the Kowalskis? Distress?
I don't know. You'd have to ask them how they responded to the whole thing.
So now at this point, Maya is stuck in state custody, right? She's at the hospital. The parents, as you can imagine, this is very stressful. They each have different ways of how they feel like they should go about things.
Beata was focused on Maya's care.
If my daughter requests to speak with me, I want to be able to speak with her.
But my approach was not to cause any more tension between the hospital and our family.
Now, I can see both approaches from each parent here, right? Beata's like, I know this treatment worked. I want to see my daughter get this. You're not giving it to her. Oh my gosh, let me just, we have to do this. And the father's more like, we need to play the game. We need to play the game, right? We need to go along with what they're saying. Both of them are a true reality. And so I can see the frustration of each parent. And this definitely led to major frustrations within the household.
There was a blow up.
They're going to hold this against you. Stop this bullshit now! I want to see my daughter again. Don't do this. Don't talk about pain meds. Don't talk about this and that. You're going to cause more problems.
I mean, I can only imagine what that had to feel like for both of them, right? I mean, just the absolute frustration. It's so sad. And I can see where the mothers want to call and be like, did you give her this? Did you give her that? My daughter's in pain. And the father being like, quit saying pain meds, right? You know what I mean? Like, it's like, yes, we get it. She needs that. But anytime you do that, it's going to make the hospital say, why is she so concerned about this? But it was like she was leading with her heart, which, I mean, I get, right? So anyways, let's keep going. So here's the thing. So obviously with all this comes lots of court proceedings, right? Now, what they say is that when this begins, the first phase is called the shelter phase. So this is when they kind of lay out the cases with what everyone has said so far. Now, they say in this that it usually doesn't end well for the parents. And this obviously was the case with Maya's parents. Basically, it's like a he said, she said type thing. Well, who do you think they're going to listen to, right? They going to listen to the parents that are being accused of this, or like a hospital saying, well, we heard this and we heard that. Again, once you get in this scenario, and this is, it should be this way, right? I'm not talking specifically towards this family, but in general, once these flags have been raised, well, everyone's thing is, well, we want to make sure that the child isn't harmed, right? We have to dot our I's and cross our T's. So they're going to always err in that way. And I get it. Again, we've seen so many cases where they don't do this and it ends horrifyingly, right? Again, obviously in this one, the fact that evidence is suppressed and whatnot to show that this isn't, what they're trying to make it out to be is a completely frustrating part of it. Anyways, I digress. Let's continue.
I think in light of the allegations, it is appropriate that a no contact order be issued at this time between mother and Maya. I know that I would. Yeah.
So now the noise that you heard, the scuffling, that was Beata collapsing in the courtroom at the hearing this. And I mean, again, I can just, it's like I can feel her disbelief. I can feel her frustration. I can't imagine going through that, having your child taken away like this from you, right? So Maya's put in child protective, custody at Johns Hopkins. Now, because they're saying, okay, well, mom's got Munchausen's, this is made up, they're lying, whatever. They're like, okay, well, we're not going to keep this regimen going on. But keep that in mind because we're going to see something else about that later down the road. But just know that they're like, oh no, this is made up. We're going to stop doing this treatment. We're going to quit doing this. They're like, obviously the mom has to start going for psych evals. Well, she does the evaluations and they're like, yeah, no, she doesn't have Munchausen's. She has a adjustment disorder due to her daughter being taken away. Understandably. And now for Beata, again, as you've seen already, she just does not get this. She doesn't get what she's going to have to do to get the daughter back, or if she gets it, she's not wanting to play the game because all she's thinking of is she's caring for her daughter who's in pain and they're not giving her the treatment that she knows she needs. And then also, I think that there's this level of just probably being just like, why are you doing this to me? And my daughter, right? Why are you doing this to our family? This is not how it's supposed to go.
Beata, this is the thing you need to understand about these cases. They're not fair. They don't care about evidence.
So one thing for this documentary when I was watching it that was very shocking to me is hearing what we just heard, right? These advocates and stuff talking about this in these clinical ways of they don't care about evidence, this is that, like Wences Bell has been wrong, and you just, if you put yourself in those shoes and you're just like, oh my God. I mean, again, I talk about in these cases where, it's like a child goes missing or a loved one or whatever, especially a child. How do you ever fall back asleep again? You know what I'm saying? What do you do in this? Like, my God, we took her in to get help and she's been taken away from us and they're trying to take her away from us, continually. I don't know how I'd react. So again, my heart breaks for all involved here.
That's why the best way to get this case to end successfully in my experience is to convince everybody that you have changed your mind and that you are going to do what they tell you to do. Mm-hmm. And then when you get your child back, you leave that hospital and you never, ever go back.
Bordering on pack up and move. Okay. Sadly, unfortunately, when you get caught in the thing like this and you're not one of the people who needs to be in the system, right? Like you have legitimately done something to your child, you got to play the game. You got to play the game. Do I agree with it? No. Am I saying that she did something wrong by this? No. I get all perspectives of it, but it's so sad to hear this reality of you have to convince everyone that you changed your mind, that you did this, and when you get her back, you don't ever go back to that hospital again, which obviously would never go back myself, right? But it's a harsh reality. And this is the part that watching this that I was like, my heart breaks for Beata because I just felt like she just couldn't, that part was such a sting to her to be like, I have to let my daughter suffer right now in order to help her, right? It was just like against that mother thing in her. Now, here's the thing during all of this, the husband, the father, Jack, he's allowed to visit, right? He's not being separated from her. Now, there are a list of rules that go along with this, right? So he can't ask about treatments. He can't, ask about when she's talking about when she's coming home, things of this nature. And the visits are very brief.
The visit was very brief and it was very difficult because I seen her condition just going downhill.
So now her condition keeps getting worse, right? Which is rare to see in these cases. Not rare. I mean, I'm acting like I know, right? But just from what I've seen, on these shows we watch, usually if this is a case of that, the child's going to just start getting better, right? Where it's like, hold on a second. The parent's gone, this, whatever. But she's getting worse, okay? Now her brother also would go and he would speak in the documentary. And he's like, yeah, she just seemed like she wasn't herself. She didn't want to be there. I mean, can you blame her? I mean, she was literally in this hospital for over 3 months, okay? It sounds utterly horrifying for a child that age, or for anybody, but especially a child. I mean, come on. So while all this is going on, the system is working against them.
And I felt it was important that Beata understood the seriousness of this. So I warned her, in all medical probability, that Maya would die a slow, painful death.
So, as you just saw, as you just heard, you know, while she's in the hospital, her original doctor is like looking at the ramifications of this and like, you know, oh, wait a second, like she's doing this, she can form these blood clots. This is really, really bad. This can go downhill. So his decision to tell the mother this, you know, what do you do? It's like, yes, we need to know, but you can see where that was like fuel on the fire for her. Because they're basically saying, like, look, they're going to kill your daughter, right? This is what she has. They're choosing to ignore that. That would have sent me over the edge if I was Beata, okay? Over the edge. Now, on that note, let's move on to another character, another person in the saga. So another layer to the onion, if you will. Okay, so a social worker at the hospital is assigned to Maya. Let's just get into it.
Was assigned to my daughter.
Please state your name for the record.
Catherine RBD.
Something didn't seem right with her.
Well, you can say that again. Something definitely wasn't right with her. So yeah, something doesn't feel right. That fatherly parent, or I mean, most of us have that too, of like, my spidey senses are going off. Something is like, what's up with this woman? So he starts doing some research on her.
So he Googled her name. The first thing that came up was she was arrested for child abuse.
I mean, can't roll my eyes hard enough at this, y'all. This part right here, y'all, sent me off the sofa and into a tailspin. Okay, I was like, she what? And she's in charge of what? Okay, so I seen on this whole cake, right, of this whole story, is here this hospital is, they doing this, oh, you're abusing her, you're doing this, you're blah, 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 blah. But now they have put a person who is going to be in direct contact and care of Maya, who has child abuse allegations or former ones against her. Now, the only reason that she was really able to continue working is because the charges were dropped at this one point. So, you know, it's this like slippery slope here, and I'm just like, seriously? Especially when we learn what she did to Maya.
You just woke up?
Yeah.
Who's with you today?
Yes.
You know, she's really interrupting because I hear her talking in the background.
Mom,
Yes.
you need to redirect.
I will redirect. I'm just telling you, this is my time with my daughter.
Mom, please redirect.
The part that gets me about this is when you hear these people talk, they're so condescending and just so, like they just know better, you know what I'm saying? And then to find out the whole time that it was just not what it was. I mean, you want to talk about fire ants in my veins.
She told me that my mom was in a mental institution. She told me that she was going to end up adopting me.
Can you imagine a child hearing those things? It's already scary enough, and these strangers are coming in. Remember, you're just there, right? And when you hear how isolated they made her, and then you're hearing this, can you imagine? Can you imagine? It's horrible. Let's refer back to that article for a second and read another little snippet of it to dig a little deeper. So it says the state's shelter order was revised to allow Jack some visitation rights and permit Beata to contact Maya by phone and video. But by December, hospital staff were imposing additional restrictions at their own discretion. Maya's social worker, Kathy Betty, declined several of Beata's FaceTime calls, which went from daily to once a week. Several aunts and uncles offered to supervise Jack's appearances, but they were all rejected by all children for appearing to be emotionally vested in the family. As administrators later said, 2 teachers who had been making the drive from Venice to St. Petersburg to tutor Maya were barred, and she stopped receiving educational instruction. Even the family priest was denied access to her floor. Okay, y'all, this is the part right here that I'm like, why are y'all punishing her to this degree? Her, Maya. Now, obviously, the family as well, right? But when I'm reading this, I'm like, this poor little girl, it breaks my heart. She's in this hospital room, ripped from her family. Can't even get the priest in there. I mean, my God. I mean, come on. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm flabbergasted at it. You know, and it's like, oh, we didn't want the aunts and uncles to come and supervise. They're emotionally invested in the family. It's their family. You know what I'm saying? You would hope they would be, right? I mean, come on. And then denying the mother the phone calls, that's the part that gets me right there. Is I'm just like, I mean, there's lots of parts that get me, but to deny the mother all that right there. And then if, so if you look at both sides of it, like that one phone call we just listened to where the mom was like, who's with you? And the daughter says, Kathy, because as soon as she started saying that, I was like, oh, Beata, don't say that. You know what I mean? Like my heart, I was like, don't say it, Beata, don't say it. Now, mind you, it was almost like this. What I'm thinking is what Beata said. You know what I'm saying? Like what's going through my mind? Because I would have been like that too. When she said Kathy's here, I would have been like, oh, God. Can't roll my eyes hard enough. She's being too loud. Tell her to shut up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I get it. But that's where I was like, oh, Beata, don't say it. It's just gonna, it's so frustrating. All right, so let's keep going.
Yeah, Kathy Beatty came over to my bed and she was like, if you want to go to the court hearing, I have to do this.
The risk management made the decision to have these pictures taken of Maya?
Yep. She removed my clothes.
She was in her sports bra and a pair of shorts.
Held me down.
Y'all, this is very similar to what Kathy was already in trouble for in the past, okay? Way more violent in the past situation. But this was just like that too. Again, this is a child who you're forcing down and taking their clothes. I mean, are you kidding me? If you want to see your mom, this is what has to happen. We're going to assault you and then take you to the hospital, to the court. I mean, it was like, prisoners get treated better than that. Prisoners get treated better than that. Okay, so let's refer to the article again to go a little bit deeper. A week later in January 2017, just before Maya was to travel from the hospital to another hearing, Betty and a nurse entered her room and told her to take her clothes off. The hospital's risk management department wanted photos of her taken before the proceeding. Maya refused to cooperate, even when Betty told her that if she didn't, she wouldn't be allowed to go to the courthouse and see her mother. Betty began to forcibly remove her pants and shirt. Maya wrote an account of it that was later included in a legal filing. I was crying and saying, no, stop, Maya wrote, but she wouldn't stop. Betty pinned me face down, and either she or the nurse took photos of me in my training bra and shorts. The Kowalskis later learned that Betty had been fired from a previous position managing foster care children for Suncoast when she was arrested and charged with child abuse. 4 fellow Suncoast employees called the police after they watched Betty pin a 10-year-old boy to the ground with her knees and cover his face with a blanket as he cried out that he couldn't breathe. In a deposition, she denied using her knees on the child. She declined to comment for this article. Well, they have some real winners working for them. I mean, this is the thing that gets me. These people that are in these positions of power that clearly have no business being there, right? Not only do they have no business being there, but they abuse their position and abuse others, but then accuse others of doing the same thing. It's literally like a gaslighting jamboree. And now look, Cynthia will admit in depositions that, yeah, Maya didn't want these pictures taken of her, but they did it anyways. They didn't contact the parents beforehand. And now, remember, like I said, at this point, they're Maya's everything in the hospital, right? So they are putting these people in charge of her that are doing these things to her. And this is the part that gets me too. Maya spends Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthday, I mean, you name it, everything was taken from her. And so it's like these people that are doing this stuff to her, it's like, this is who you're spending your holidays around. And I mean, I don't know if she specifically spent the holiday around this woman, but you know what I'm saying? It's not an environment for a child. Now, I want to look at a clip here of Kathy talking about Maya's pain and that kind of a thing and basically saying like, oh, it's getting better and she's doing this. But Maya would testify, look, my pain looked different every single day, right? That's just a disease. It's never the same.
When we look at pain and when I see kids in pain, Maya never showed some of the symptoms that we see other kids in pain having.
Now, here's the thing. I don't know who's sitting in this room and looking or whatever, but her eye contact in that, the averting of the eyes and blah, 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 and I'm like, yes, something doesn't feel right. One thing that I see in this is where people are so confident of themselves and their ability, like, you know, Sally Smith, like, oh, I know a second, it's a child, I can talk to them in 5 seconds flat. I mean, she didn't say that, but you know what I'm saying? And then her right here, oh, I've seen other children in pain. This wasn't, no, not Maya. This wasn't the same thing. You know, and it's just like, I get there's one-off scenarios, and maybe her condition was like this one-off scenario, but it's the fact that everyone just went on their whole thing of, nope, I know everything, and nope, we're writing this off as A, B, and C, and you're done. Now, look, this whole process, it goes on and on and on. Court dates and this and that and blah, 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 blah. Maya's not getting any better. You know, things are continuing to go on, but then it gets worse. Now, at one court date, when they go, basically, you know, they're like, look, could Maya at least hug her mother? And the judge is like, no, we can't at this point. And that's when things got worse. So January 2017, there was a party in the neighborhood. Now remember, Maya's at the hospital. She's doing that thing. So it's just the mom, the dad, the brother. And they're supposed to be going. And so Beata's basically like, I have a migraine. I'm just going to stay behind, but I'll wrap the gifts. Y'all go do your thing. So that's what happens. Well, when they come home, the bedroom door is closed. And so they think in their mind, like, oh, she's taking a nap. Let's just leave her be. So dad and son kind of like go about doing their thing. Well, then a little bit later, the brother, Beata's brother, comes over and he's like doing something in the house, whatever. He goes into the garage and the father would say, we just heard this like blood-curdling scream. And he finds Beata hanging in the garage. She has taken her life. Now, they would contribute, this is essentially like her breaking point was she couldn't hug Maya. And that was just like, I'm done. And this is, I don't see a way out of this to help her to get what she needs and to make it through my pain of this, still being here on this plane, on this earth.
I know this is what happened. I know it's because he turned her down. That killed her. All the way home, that's all she talked about.
So Beata left a note, and I want to just put a couple of the screenshots of it up here and read off of those. So it says here from Beata Kowalski, subject letter for Judge Lee Hallworth. Your heart is made out of iceberg. By taking the side of ACH and DCF, you have destroyed my family, my marriage, you have put us in bankruptcy, and you still denied me to see my daughter in court today. Subject, goodbye draft. Please take care of Maya and tell her how much I love her every day. Please tell Kyle also that I love him very much and that I hope he grows up to be a strong, good man, has great future, and stays close to God. I'm sorry, but I no longer can take the pain being away from Maya and being treated like a criminal. I cannot watch my daughter suffer in pain and keep getting worse. Okay, so, wow. Heavy, right? I mean, I'm a little bit speechless, which that's odd for me, right? The sad part, the scary part, by her no longer being in the picture, it changes the dynamics of everything.
Shortly after Beata's death, they allowed me to take Maya to go see a specialist in Rhode Island, Dr. Chopra. He did an evaluation on her, which did confirm that she does have CRPS. And he sent his report to the court. Not too much longer after that, Maya was released.
Does that not rip your heart out? Oh, whoops, sorry, she does have that. Okay, she can go home now. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Now again, would this have gone this way with the mother still in the picture? I don't know, and I'm not saying the mother was causing something, but I'm saying the hospital was looking at like, the mother's the one doing this, and blah, 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 blah. Now that she's gone, okay, well, this changes the dynamic. Absolute unnecessary tragedy. Now, of course, with this came rules. She was not allowed these ketamine treatments. It wasn't just like, oh, okay, you can go home, bye. Yeah, I mean, they instilled some rules and whatnot, like some kind of a little plan or whatever. So there was that. And slowly over time, like she did a bunch of physical therapy and all this, she slowly began to improve. So now, let's fast forward a little bit, right? This is essentially the story that we've gone through. Let's fast forward to kind of like where we're at, not really now with the court case, but what kind of got more into this. So years later, a reporter, Deborah Chen, she discovers the story and she starts looking into it and she's like, huh, what? Let me report on this. Now, at this time, Dr. Smith is still like, I didn't do anything wrong. Like, this was, no, that is what it is.
But what I found out was that Dr. Smith's opinions differed a lot from other doctors, including Maya's care team, Dr. Kirkpatrick, and Dr. Hannah.
So as we already know, her opinions were completely different, right? Remember, they're sitting here saying A, B, and C took place, right? At least at this stage of the game. So this starts to begin the process of exposing, and being like, well, this doesn't sound right, and that doesn't sound right. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Now, let's go on to another clip from that article and, well, dig a little deeper. Smith, who retired this summer, tended to interpret cases aggressively. Children in Pinellas are removed from their homes at one of the highest rates rates of Florida's 67 counties. And Smith said this is because the child protection team she directed does a more thorough, high-quality job. For one of her lectures, she prepared a slideshow of several different photographs that goes on or whatever. But the main point was that part right there. So here's the thing. This article comes out that Deborah Research reported on. And in the documentary, she's like, oh, I thought this was just kind of go on to my next story or whatever. Well, all these families start coming out with these stories just like Maya's of, yeah, you know what? We're at home. This emergency happens with our child. We do what we thought you were supposed to do. We take him to the hospital. And I mean, in some of these cases, I'm talking people sitting in jail. I mean, it's like insane. And they're like, next thing we know, we're accused of child abuse. And it's just their lives spiral.
And one thing that they all had in common was Dr. Sally Smith and Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital.
So, like I said, these people would go into the emergency room with something, oftentimes speaking with her for just a few minutes, thinking she worked at the hospital, thinking she was a whatever, and then they're in handcuffs, or just like we saw with Maya, like this is going on. Again, kudos to you if you're stopping true child abuse, right? But when it's to the point where you're absolutely destroying families, to this degree, no. Something needs to be reevaluated. The way they're going about things needs to be looked at, but also accountability. But we'll talk about that more in a minute. Let's watch the next clip.
I do almost all of the evaluations for children who are admitted to All Children's Hospital. For the last 30 years, I'm very reasonable, generally compassionate, caring person, and I don't set out each day to tear families apart.
I'm a compassionate, caring person. I can't roll my eyes hard enough at that. And I don't mean to sit here and just be over the top, because I think what happened, maybe she was at some point, but after you've seen enough stuff, it's almost like if you're erring on the side of ignoring other people in your field and kind of looking at it like, I'm the go-to, I'm the final say, this is not good. This is not good. Not when it results in damaging families like this. Now, again, for the cases where it saves the child, absolutely awesome. But there just needs to be more of a check and balance in place when one person has this much power. Let's refer back to the article to go a little bit deeper and hear about one person's experience. When Smith entered the room, Vivian assumed she was another all-children's physician, and they spoke for 10 minutes. In her recollection, Vivian mentioned that Jeremy had been able to remain calm when the EMTs were first examining the baby. And Smith grew suspicious. She asked why Jeremy had not been frantic, and Viviana explained that Jeremy was a paramedic himself and was accustomed to emergencies. Smith decided that Jeremy was an abuser. Although the baby had no bruises anywhere on his body, Smith concluded that he had been slammed on a soft surface and that the head trauma was inflicted. 2 days later, she sent her evaluation to DCF. Jeremy was charged with aggravated child abuse, a felony punishable by up to 30 years in prison. Smith disputes Viviana's account. But there's case after case of this where I'm like, how are you determining this in 10 minutes and sending someone away? You see where, imagine when somebody has this kind of power and you talk to them the wrong way, or you talk to their friend on the staff, you know what I'm saying, they're the staff member that's from whatever, the wrong way. Look at how this can go. Humans are humans. Bias is bias. You can't tell me that doesn't interfere with this. So now remember, this is the current court case going on right now, right? Remember that Beata was a nurse and she had a different perspective on things.
Beata was a nurse, not a lawyer. But somehow she knew what the hospital was doing. She documented everything. Every email, every writing, every phone call. And all of that documentation is the reason we can sue.
Good on her. And y'all, I know it's that whole lesson of document, make notes. It sucks to do it, but when you see stuff like this and how much she documented and was able to track this and the lies and this kind of stuff, again, it's why they can sue. It's why they're in court. It's why they're going to hopefully make a difference.
This young girl, Maya, represents hope for all of us. And bringing Sally Smith down, bringing the system down.
Now, this was one of the people who we read about in the article there. And like she said, Maya represents hope. Maya's family is one of the only ones that's able to go toe-to-toe and do this court battle. Can you imagine suing a hospital? You already know, right? These are massive corporations, right? So Maya's family is the only one that can go up there. And so, like she said, she represents hope, but also change, right? Because only until accountability is held can change come forth. And even then, sometimes it doesn't.
I feel like it's pretty self-explanatory. The last time I was in a hospital, I was medically abducted for 3 months. I just can't go to doctors. I hate going to doctors. I hate going to hospitals.
Now, in this clip, this is Maya describing her feeling towards the hospital. Don't blame her. You know, she goes off and it gets super upset. Like, you know, she gets really triggered during these depositions and testimony. Don't blame her. Again, the fact that she's able to do it, I mean, this is a strong young lady here, okay? It gives me goosebumps because to go through this as a child, we're not even getting into her diagnosis, okay? This is just the legal stuff she's been through. And the loss, obviously. To be able to go through this and then being currently in court now, I mean, that's one thing that really stuck out to me was her resilience and her ability to move forth, because I kept finding myself saying this throughout the stages of her life being depicted in the documentary, is I'm thinking back to when I was that age and I'm like, I can't imagine going through every level of thing that she's gone through at that age. My hat's off to her.
Hearing the nurses talk about me. She's a liar. She's a liar. Don't believe anything she says. She's not in pain. That's what they would say to me.
Now, can you imagine? You know what it's like? Nobody likes to be told they're a liar, but you know how it was like when you were a kid and somebody would be like, you're a liar, not telling the truth. It was like so frustrating when you knew you weren't or whatever. Okay, so something for real like this where she knows how she feels and she's listening to these people who have victimized her family, all this, and then being like, she's a liar, don't believe this. I mean, what a bunch of petty, small people. You know what I'm saying?
And recently we started digging into the codes that Johns Hopkins used for billing the insurance companies. And we found out that they billed them for 3 months treatment for CRPS.
Go on, pick herself up off the sofa after that one. Roscoe, get on back up there. Remember I said earlier about the thing, as I keep this in mind, one of the things I said that about, they were billing them for treating the disease that they said she didn't have and was making up. Y'all. Sign over the deed to the damn hospital right now, okay? Case closed. Sofa Squad has spoken, okay? When I saw that, y'all, I'm not lying. I researched anger management. I said, sign me up. And that's what I'm talking about, because it upsets me so badly. I can't imagine living through it. You know, I'm just like, my God, again, just what a strong person Maya is. I mean, her whole family, obviously, you know, but just, I cannot imagine. I just cannot imagine. It's so frustrating, you know. And here's the thing, especially now, most of us have been to doctors, hospital. Y'all know how insanely tricky hospital billing is and stuff, and how shady it is most of the time. Number one, how marked up it is, but number two, how much they inflate the costs, and also not just inflate, but like high. You know what I mean? Like, it's confusing, right? So for all this, if I was like, y'all have been charging and treating her for this, are you kidding? Done. Now, again, the documentary will continue to go in depth into several of these cases and whatnot of lives that were destroyed and what happened with them, all at the hands of Sally Smith in the hospital.
So when there is just one person whose word is like gold, opinions, interpretation, perspectives, bias starts to play in.
Amen. That's the reporter speaking who wrote the article, and kudos to her too for helping be part of exposing these people in the system. And just like she said, I mentioned it earlier, you know, people are people. There's going to be bias. And so when you give one person this much power, and clearly who uses bias and stuff like that, I mean, she comes in and decides somebody's hurt their child within moments. You know, and again, if it really happened, great if there's evidence, but what gets me with it is once the evidence shows otherwise, they don't relent from that. It's like, no, I know better than the evidence. No, you don't. Not every time. Now, here's the thing. On the note of that, let's watch what one of the victims does every year.
Since 2016, I've been writing Sally Smith a Christmas card with our family's picture on it. So she's reminded of a family that she tried to break apart, but didn't.
Girl, keep sending them. Every year, send them. Send them to the hospital, too. I mean, I love that, right? Because they do need to be reminded of this is what you tried to destroy. I mean, I don't blame her at all. Now, here's the thing. This would go on. The battle to get to the trial that we're seeing now went years and years and years. You already know the hospital pulled out every stop they could to avoid this. And so watching the documentary, I'm sitting here and I'm like, they actually were able to get to the courtroom? I mean, it's insane, y'all. You can only imagine what this did to the family.
It's never gonna end. It's never gonna end. It's never gonna end.
Now, this came after they went to court thinking we're going to trial tomorrow, and the hospital had pulled out another stop to postpone it indefinitely. And I was like, it gives me goosebumps because this is where I was like, that level of shock and disappointment as a teenager over and over and over. Oh my God, bless all their hearts. I just can't imagine.
But if we give up and shut our mouths, it's gonna happen again. It's just a matter of time.
And aim in, brother, to that. This is the thing. This is accountability. This is what I'm talking about with a case like this. Okay, so let's go ahead and get comfy and just like kind of talk about it overall. Amen to the last thing he said. As far as accountability goes, it'll happen again. Now, he will be quoted as saying, you know, look, I get it too. You know what I mean? He's like, yes, things need to be reported, but they need to go about it a different way. So it's not like he's like, he gets it, right? He gets that they need to look out and he thinks that they should. But just like we've kind of discussed here today, clearly there needs to be some checks and balances or something put in there. Now, here's the thing. So, like I said, this is currently in trial right now. It's been going on for a minute. It probably will continue to go on for a while. We're going to start watching more of it. Now, I've watched bits of it along the way, but I'm going to kind of start back from the beginning and, you know, report back to the squad or whatever. Now, Sally and Suncoast, or that whole end of things or whatever, you know, they were part of the lawsuit. They sued several of these people, John Hopkins, all these people. Suncoast already settled on that end of things, right? I think it was like for a few $1 million or something. And so now they're going up for the secondary part of it, like, you know, John Hopkins part of the trial. So when I watched this, now again, like I said, I was like, oh my God, you know, it has me angry, it has me crying, it has this. Y'all, at the end of the documentary, Maya reads this letter. I'm talking blubbering. I needed the Dixie plate, wherever it was. Okay, y'all. I mean, it was a lot, right? And not in a bad way, obviously, but it was just so emotional to hear that. Because again, I just kept going back to, this is a child. I mean, I know she's a young adult now, but nonetheless, when this happened, I just was like, my God. You know, it was just absolute insanity. Basically, what I'm saying is, watch the documentary in full. You know, that you just saw a few of the things here. It's definitely worth watching. I mean, you'll be riveted just because you're like, what? I mean, this goes on. Like, you know, this is a big name like John Hopkins, you know, kind of a thing. Now, obviously, they're left, you know, the mother's gone. There's the brother, Maya, the father, you know, and obviously other family members and whatnot. So my thing is this. You know, again, like I said, absolutely all down for if you see something, say something, and, you know, let's rectify the stuff that we already see take place where no one reports or CPS drops the ball and that kind of a thing. You know, but having one person, you know, especially with a privatized, well, you know, child welfare system, I'm like, seriously? And then this one person wields this much power and everybody like just refers to what she says. I'm like, no, why do we still have this? Why? It seems like every day this type of thing is exposed. And I mean, maybe there's so much of that going on that we're in this constant level of exposing this. And in years to come, we can start seeing different positions, like ones like this, whatever, just being in such that there's someone to check on each other to hold people accountable so this doesn't happen. When I was listening to the stories of the variety of people, there's one guy who, he spent 300 days in jail. Life destroyed. I think it was the one that we saw with Viviana talking, and then charges were dropped. I mean, and other ones got up there talking about, I mean, their reputations were destroyed over just crazy stuff. And you're like, what? You know, how are they allowed to do this? And then if there's no level of reporting how many mistakes were made, like, why not? Why wouldn't you? Just to keep things in check. So that dynamic right there just has me like, again, it baffles me beyond belief. I hope that they can get this behind them and obviously move on, but heal as best as possible. Because just watching the documentary, I was like, this is their life ever since she was, I forget forget how old she was, like what, 11? This has been Maya's life, right? Now, obviously, it's going to always be her mother's no longer here. And then just look at the damage, the trauma. I mean, like she was saying, she doesn't want to go to hospital. Imagine what it's going to be like when she gets older. And you know how like when you're young, you don't have to go to the doctors as much. Now she might have to go more regularly because of her condition. But like for me, it was like not till I was older. Hold on, Roscoe wants to get down, that I had to go more often and stuff like that. And it's like, you know, when you're in a position of like, look, stuff goes on. Imagine the distrust you would have for after this experience. You know, it's already a scary thing to be rolling up in the hospital and doctors, stuff like that, and then to have this happen, medically abducted. And to me, the word she used, I'm quoting her, perfect, right? I mean, literally. So that's it. I want to know what you think. Now, again, this is coming from the perspective of I have not started watching the trial from start to finish. I want to start the documentary. Now, I'm not saying don't tell me, but just know that that's my perspective, because you might be like, oh, Paul, you didn't hear this, and drop it in the comments by all means. But I'm going to start now going through the trial and watching it from the beginning, getting caught up on the key parts and stuff like that. But let me know what you think down in the comment section below. I'm very curious to know. I know this is a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know we're back at the old squad. We had a good mountain trip. It was very nice. And that's it. So let me know what you think. And Roscoe is tap dancing out there, but he does tap dance out in his little Spidey coat to, well, drop him some sofas. Here he comes. Roscoe, you wanna say your sofa thing? No thanks, Dad, but you say it for me. Okay, I just said it for him. Well, come here. You wanna say, he wants to come say hey. Or goodbye, I should say. Say hey, everybody. I love you guys. I love you, Dad. Listen, y'all, just drop some sofas for him if you don't mind. And look, until we meet in the comment section on them sofas to just do our little talking, we'll see y'all there.